Welcome back to Primary Target, episode 13. I'm your host, Who the Fuck, joined by my co-host Vargren and our two very special guests, Bombers Bar FCs, Nova Valentis and Sin Alarma. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey there.
Today we'll be covering a few topics. We'll be talking about how Bombers Bar came to be, where it's grown since its beginnings. We'll be talking about the most recent changes to Blob's battleships. We'll obviously be talking about the resource allocation changes, the war so far, and we'll have story time at the end. So let's start off with where you guys. Let's start off with sort of like a brief background on the both of you. Let's go with Nova first. Nova, like, where did you start in Eve, and how did you become a Bombers Bar FC? Like, how did you become involved in Bombers Bar?
I think it was like 2014, no, or 16. I can't remember. My roommate was playing Eve, and we started 2 weeks trial, and I stopped after the 2 weeks, and he continued playing, and he then flew with Bombers Bar at some points, and I was sometimes sitting in his room drinking wine, and we were watching and listening, like how he played and on those Bombers Bar fleets. And then I saw one of those Templeman videos. He's the founder of Bombers Bar. And I thought, well, I might try Eve again. And that's how I restarted playing Eve. And by that time, Templeman stopped playing, and he came back for a short period, and I got involved in Bombers Bar, but then it all died down, and I kind of rekindled it, even though I had no experience, and I only had like 4 million SP or something, so I could fly a bomber, but nothing more. And I had no clue about PvP, really.
Okay. Sin, how about you?
So, a buddy of mine in, I think, 2013 got me into Eve. I was playing a different game as a breaking point, like a mod called, Armor 3 breaking point thing. Mod. And got into Eve. I tried it. I hated it. I really hated Eve because I was like, PvP is impossible. Everyone just beats you. Like I struggled. I then got into high sec mining and became a mining director in a friend's corp. And then, just like Nova, 2014, I started watching Chance Ravine, Wingspan, and Templeman videos as well for Bombers Bar, and that's when I created the Sin Alarma character with the sole purpose of just getting into a bomber and becoming a stealth bomber pilot. That's now become my main over the years, and she does sort of everything. It wasn't until much later. I think it was last year that I asked about becoming a JFC for Bombers Bar, and here I am.
Now you seem to be one of the more popular FCs in Bombers Bar too.
Yeah, I think it's more active at the moment. Like they come and go, right? So maybe
Sin is very popular and being super modest. Also, he is a really good wormhole FC. You can watch some videos, and he did some dank fights, and he's always being modest, but he's really great and a talent.
I've run into Sin in wormholes before, and I was like, why does that name sound so familiar? Who is this guy? And I was like, duh. Yeah, it was positive for one of us, I'm sure. Cool. So, since your guys' involvement in Bombers Bar, like, where has it grown from to where it is now?
So, in the Templeman days, I think 30-man fleets were big. And they bombed. They got famous. I have this whole presentation from Eve Berlin where I talk about the history of Bombers Bar. You can watch it on YouTube. Just type in "history of Bombers Bar" if you guys like. Also, for the listeners, because I know this is hard on podcasts, the guy with the German voice is Nova, and the guy with the Australian accent is Sin. Just to make it easier, because I often get confused.
That's a good point. That's a good point, and usefully for identification here, we all have different accents. So who the fuck is American? I'm British. So there we go. That's all covered.
Yeah. So you got the good education. No, I'm just joking.
He's talking to me. It's okay.
Certainly not.
Yeah. So then it died down, and when I rekindled it a bit, I was just like, is there no FC around? I was in the Bombers Bar chat, and it was like 200 people in there. Is there no FC around? I want to go on a fleet. Like, really, I am willing, like, to die. I don't know anything, but I have this one bomber now, and I really want to play. And there was no one. For 2 weeks I tried, and there was no one. And then people were just, well, let's just get together and go to nullsec and do something. And basically the first few rekindling Bombers Bar fleets were starting with 5 people max, sometimes 3. And we were bombing and torping, and just with bombers, no recons. And yeah, now it grew from 5 bombers to sometimes 150, more likely 70 on a regular basis. In the winter, it's usually more. Summer, it's usually less because of, I guess, free time of people.
So you were really like a big factor in kind of restarting or relighting that fire for Bombers Bar.
Yeah. Because then I started doing more and more and tried to get other people involved as well, so they would also do fleets. And I learned my lessons in terms of making wrong decisions and stuff. And also the core principles of Bombers Bar, getting them hardened and like fixing the little kinks here and there. But now I think we have an awesome running system, and everyone is really supportive inside of the Bombers Bar core people who do stuff, like the regular people and the support people. Like, it's all by the community for the community. And it's really nice. We get new junior FCs all the time, and people are happy and helping each other. And I like all of the vibe. Like, I think at least since Sin came in for the last year, 1.5 years, it's been, I think, almost the best that Bombers Bar has ever been.
When did you re-kick it? Like, I guess, pull it back together again? Because that must have been what, 2016 or 17, maybe? I don't know, 18.
It was it was 1 year and 3 months after my character was born. 1 year and 4 months. So basically, I was not there for a year, not playing the game. It was just doing the trial, and then I was playing for a couple of months. And in the September of that year, I think it was 14, 15, 16. I can't remember. I would have to look up my character.
2014, because I've just looked up your character. It would be late 2014.
So I started the game 2013 officially.
Yeah.
Then it was late. Yeah, it was September. I think it was the 30th of September where I did my first fleet officially. And
I was getting into Bombers Bar as a just a baby bomber dude, finding the channel. Hey guys, what are the fits? All that sort of stuff. And I remember there were some really strong FCs. There was there was Calcula around. Marshy and Olmeca sort of were. I don't know if they were junior FCs, but they were sort of like in and around there. They were not known names. They were just sort of around. And there was Lexa as well, who was an amazing FC. She was really cool. And I started to hunt for those guys, and then I started to look to be a JFC. But I, being a military guy, got deployed, and at the same time, a bunch of drama happened. And I remember coming back, and things were super quiet.
Yeah, there was a lot of drama. It was like the first wave of FCs I trained that was, by that point, already really popular because they made it and they got really good, and they were very active. But boy, that's a long time, a long ride, man. I think a lot of stuff happened.
Was that like, I think the Marshy days were probably like, I remember those as being prime. Like, we lived in nullsec at the time, and like seeing a Marshy ping go out and be like, a rage Marshy ping go out. It was like, everyone dock up your works. I think Marshy's got eyes on you right now. Like,
yeah, he was, but he was also playing, I think, the game 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, he had this immense network of cloaky campers.
Yeah.
And he was becoming really great at doing the high-level coordination work with various groups who were interested in dropping there too. So you would multiply your power. If you usually only have like 70 people for a fleet, and then you can bring in a pandemic horde or whatever to dunk on those targets as well. That was pretty powerful, but also the amount of work he put in there, I don't really recommend.
Yeah.
for people to do that.
He had the majority of impasse cookie camped, which the amount of characters and the amount of like just paying attention to that, literally just looking at all those screens is got to
Yeah.
be exhausting. Yeah, that's a bit much.
I mean,
I don't know
it's
that I'll ever
easy.
have that
It's
kind
easy
of-
to go off the deep end. Let's be honest. It's easy to go off the deep end and take it a little bit too far sometimes. And we've all kind of overcommitted to Eve, I'm sure, in the past, or are still doing so currently.
Yeah, for
But-
sure.
You know, you got to give credit where it's due. Like, I'm not an indie guy at all, so I was never one of these guys that was particularly scared by the pings. But it was always fun to see the levels of panic generated by the thought of a Bombers Bar fleet suddenly appearing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
agreed. What do you guys feel about the most recent changes to Blops, like the fuel bay and the resists? You guys excited about that?
So, I mean, the fuel is a huge welcome change. I can't express how disappointing it is when you go to bridge a fleet and only a bunch of dudes get through, because the current meta, or sorry, the meta just before the change was a case of, you had these max cargo expanded Blopses, predominantly the Redeemer or the Panther or the Sin were the main ones, and you would have to almost like shoveling coal. You'd be shoveling it from your cargo into the fuel bay just to make sure you got some of the bigger fleets through. And there's nothing worse than a bunch of guys, particularly on a not purple shoot at Newbro's welcome fleet, to have 4 or 5 guys who it's their first bridge they don't get through. So the extra fuel is awesome. I think it also makes armor doctrines like the Legion more viable now. The resists, I mean, unless someone else grossly thinks differently, I think Blopses are quite underpowered for combat as opposed to just bridging, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it makes the high end fits a little bit cheaper if you want to get the same thing. But I think they overlooked a bunch of details of the Black Opses. For example, the targeting range of a Panther is like 60, 70. For a Tech 2 battleship, that's almost nothing, especially if you want to MJD onto targets. You kind of want to have them locked already, but you can't. I think that's a bit laughable for what it is. A super expensive Tech 2 battleship.
Yeah,
It's nice they brought
I feel like they haven't really made it into like a it's not that combat battleship that everyone thinks that it could be, and I think it's like a long way from that. But as like I've always looked at it, and I'm pretty sure that you guys might feel the same. I've always looked at the Black Ops battleship as being a tool to do a job. And realistically, like my Redeemer has nothing but cargo expanders. And because that's just how you fit it. Yeah. So really just giving me even more fuel in there is just a great thing. So I'm happy with that, because it's just like you're fixing the thing that I basically use the ship exclusively for. I feel like if I ever get shot at in my Redeemer, I've done something stupid.
I love the Widow. It's my favorite ship in the game, and it depresses me that it's still useless.
I have this really bad habit of training all the wrong ships on all the wrong characters. Like for instance, I fly capitals on my main instead of my alt. Let's just
not what you want.
It's not what you want. And the battleship that I chose to train to 5 was Caldari. At a time when the Caldari Blops, the Widow, is just the worst Blops battleship, and I'm so sad because of that.
So pretty though.
But like Vargren, I consider it a tool to bridge people. I don't consider it a combat thing. Like I've never actually combat dropped my Widow. I've only ever used it to bridge people. That being said, it is literally the worst ship to bridge with. So again, I've just made the worst choices possible. But with this change, it becomes more viable as a bridger, and so I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, I was thinking more about the solo Black Ops guys who used to do things and hunt people down solo, but even with the changes, I don't think that's gonna have a comeback
viable.
or it's just not worth it.
If they were doing it before, they can still do it now, and you'll have slightly better resist. So it's a minor buff for those guys. But I think it's like you're talking about such a small percentage of the EVE population that has ever like solo dropped a Black Ops battleship. for PvP, you know, it's like you can't overly cater too much to like tiny groups. And I don't know if you want to make I kind of feel like if you want to make a fancy battleship more viable for combat, it's like Marauders already exist. So yeah, I don't know. Like I say, I'm all good with them just kind of like working on that utility and making it less of a pain to bridge a fleet. And yeah, I'm all for more armor doctrines being bridged. Legions are great fun.
Yeah. What do you guys normally get? Like when you're talking about bridging, how many bridges do you normally have to bring? Like,
One.
okay.
One mostly. The bombers are pretty light, and then we have like 10 support cruisers, mostly recons and sometimes links, T3 cruisers. And they're not that heavy, and it also depends on your range. If you would always do max range jumps, that would consume a lot of fuel, especially on the bigger fleets. If it's like 100 ships, it's already on the shorter range jumps. It's already a little bit of a strain. But yeah, they're not heavy. Like bombers are not heavy, so you can bridge them pretty easily. And also, the way we hunt is usually in a close vicinity of where we get out of the wormholes, because it just would take too much time if we would go further away. It's like of a time management thing and how much bang for time spent you get out of it and the likelihoods. And therefore, we usually don't do those super max range jumps anyway.
Yeah, okay.
It
that makes
does
sense.
help whaling fleets, right? Though, so if you wanted to go hunt a region, we call it whaling, where we go to a particular region and hunt it. It makes it easier to get in and out, because one of the big disadvantages of whaling is if you don't have a wormhole or a known way out, you've got to always be watching your fuel, because as soon as you run out, that's the fleet stranded.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost need two Viators full of fuel to make it really relaxed, so you can take a deep dive into deeper nullsec and also then combat bridge back. So the thing you want to do on whaling fleet is not take travel bridges, but coordinate the combat bridges to, even if it's just a Noctis or whatever, just make it more fun. Like, make the combat bridges also go in the correct direction of where you want to go.
Okay. You've confused me there.
Yeah, that's fine. Just ask
Sorry.
what's confusing.
So when you're saying like use a Noctis to make the combat bridge go in the direction you want to go, you
Oh
mean
yeah,
like
just kill like even if you usually only would want to go for capitals or super shiny stuff.
I see what you're saying. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and rather than taking a bridge into empty space just for travel purposes, so you get a better area that you could hunt. Yeah, just take a shitty target then that is already like one system next to the one where you wanted to stage the fleet or whatever, and yeah, make it more fun for the fleet.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I think also kind of getting that initial, get some blood on you type thing, because like me and who come from a background of Brave, which is very much like, you have to play to the lowest common denominator at all times. The ship moves, the fleet moves at the speed of the slowest ship. So, you're always kind of, you have to account for the fact that like there's going to be like at least a few new bros who aren't really going to have any clue. Like some of these guys are going to be taking a bridge for the first time or flying a bomber for the first time or whatever it is. In our case, like flying a caracal for the first time. So I guess kind of like getting that initial kill and just showing them how it all works sets you up nicely for the second one, regardless.
Yeah.
But that actually it kind of leads me into what I was going to ask about, which was the like how do you deal with that new bro element? Like do you is there, because I've never been on a Bombers Bar fleet. I know who's done them before, but I've never been on a Bombers Bar fleet. So
Such a good question.
like
Patience.
I
is the
know,
trick
I know,
answer.
I know.
Yeah, absolute patience. Every Bombers Bar fleet will always have what we call a new bro speech very, very early in the fleet, which is, focused on those people that potentially have never been in a stealth bomber before and certainly have never taken a Black Ops bridge before. But yeah, if you're a Bombers Bar FC, there's a lot of patience in just, I wouldn't say hand-holding, but certainly accepting of mistakes and trying to develop them as they go.
How
Also,
have you? Yeah, go on.
it's like a multi-layered system that is kind of in place, and one part is there's a lot of information in the Bombers Bar MOTD. The second part is when they join the fleet and they X up in the X up channel and they get invited, they join the fleet. In the fleet MOTD, there's usually destination, the correct comms, the correct ship types to bring, and a lot of other information, who is FC, Bridger, etc., to put them on the watch list. And there's usually like 1 or 2 very short GIFs or videos linked on how to bridge and how to do certain things. So that already gives them information right up front where they could at least get to the fleet and know the very lowest basics. Then we have the Nubro speeches, and what is, I think, almost most important for any random questions or if people overlook the information. We always tell, or at least I try, and a lot of other FCs, we always try to tell the guys who already have flown with Bombers Bar a lot, and that's usually over 60% of the fleet is already really adept to Bombers Bar. We tell them pay it forward. If you see a Nubro question, the FCs, especially on larger fleets, don't have time to micromanage and handhold, but the fleet members then step in, and also in the Bombers Bar channel, the normal pilots, they step in and help with the most common questions and any specified questions that the Nubros might have.
I will say, like, the Bombers Bar Discord is probably one of the most civil and helpful and like just like friendly discords that I have as far as like Discord servers. And I think that that pays testament to you guys and like the culture that you have sort of encouraged within Bombers Bar. And I just wanted to compliment you guys on that. It is like a
So impressive, like for what is essentially just like a completely open organization.
Yep.
I mean, it almost inevitably kind of like descends into some kind of toxicity or unpleasantness, and keeping it out of that level takes, effort and strength of character and kind of,
I
other-
don't feel we moderate
no.
the channel almost at all, do we? Like, I'm
No,
trying to
we
think now.
no, we don't.
Yeah.
No,
Do you think, is it
I mean,
just
we
a
take the
natural
tools, but-
result
Yeah.
of
No,
the kind
it's
of
not.
people that like Bombers Bar fleets? Is it like, is it if you're a stealthy space murderer, do you tend to be quite polite? Like, is there some psychology going on here?
Here's the thing.
No.
I think that Sin can probably attest to this. Like, if you take, which is probably a very unfair comparison, but if you take a Discord server like the Praise Bob Discord server, and you take that, and then you look at the Bombers Bar Discord server, those are two polar opposite sort of so like neither one of those Discord servers are like belong to an alliance or a corporation specifically. They're both full of people from different alliances and different corporations. It's there for like helpful purposes. It's there for like sometimes coordination purposes. It's there for like AARs and discussion, things like that. But if you look at Praise Bob and then you look at Bombers Bar, one of them is a very civil, it's a very nice place to come. The other one is a dumpster fire full of lots of memes and trash talk.
Oh, we
I
also
wonder-
love memes. We have for memes and trash talk, we have the meme channel.
See,
And
you've
that's where
upset Nova
all
now.
the
He's like,
go.
we're just as good at dumpster fire as anyone else.
No, I don't say that. We also say mean things, kind of, but everyone knows we don't like if we kill someone and they made obvious mistakes, we point them out and make fun of it sometimes. Or if we just happen to, beat the counter fleet of a very large alliance and they thought they would really crush us, but they lost a bunch of capitals. Yeah, we make fun, but always in a lighthearted way. But what you guys say, that doesn't come natural. But I think it comes from the FCs that you have and the group of FCs. And when there is, we also were way more toxic at some point. I have to say,
Were you?
maybe comparative to alliances, big alliances, and other groups, maybe not as much, but we were more toxic at some point, and it came from, like FCs being really angry on fleets and demeaning people, and then like kicking them out of Bombers Bar, threatening that kind of stuff, and kind of overstepping their own powers, because FCs can rule their fleets how they like, but they can't exclude someone from Bombers Bar just because they said something they didn't like or something like that. But I think that the whole Bombers Bar culture comes from the FCs being really nice. They have been treated nice and welcomed, and they always see that around. And if you have the majority of the people creating the content, basically, being really inviting, Nubro friendly, understanding, and not divisive at all, then I think that changes the entire atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree, and that's my compliment to you. My compliment is that you guys have been.
Thank you very much. That's
cheers.
one of the best compliments we got in a long time, I think.
You guys have definitely developed that
Go
culture.
on, yeah.
That's all.
Also, people are surprised, especially some Nubros who were afraid. They had their bomber for 5 months, and they were always too afraid to come to a fleet because they thought, well, if I fuck up, I'm going to get shouted at or something like that, because maybe they have seen those things in other areas. And then they're super surprised how helpful and inviting everyone is. And
I was that dude, like 100%. When I made Set Alarma expressly to be a stealth bomber pilot, I was so nervous going into even the Bombers Bar channel and asking, because I was like, I don't know, I need maybe I need two torps. I need to have all the things. I need max skills. And then honestly, it was a joke. Like, you don't need it. You can, as long as you can cloak, you can put those T1 meta torps on and fire faction ammo. You are good to go on these fleets.
Yeah, even less. Like most fleets, like even if only someone can only fly in a Stero, he can still be helpful, and he can come and enjoy and at least get into PvP a little bit better, understand the situations more, how the comms work, the specific words, and get over those PvP shakes before even they have good skills to do more DPS or whatever. It doesn't matter. They need to learn that stuff anyway. It might as well start early. And I think that's a big surprise for a lot of people, that it's not as elitist or whatever as other groups.
I know we're not intending it to be, but for anyone who's listening to this that hasn't really heard of Bombers Bar before, this is a phenomenally good recruitment pitch.
Yeah,
like it sounds so like this is so good. Like I'm gonna sign up.
We're plugging the shit out of Bombers Bar, and I'm happy to do it. Like, it's absolutely fantastic.
What sometimes happens in the Bombers Bar channel in the game, it doesn't happen on Discord. I don't know why, but sometimes in the game there is like more veteran Bombers Bar people in there. And when I say Bombers Bar people, I mean people who fly with us often, because we are not a corp. We're just like a free, loose organization, and everyone can basically do what they want. So like we have regular pilots who sometimes make like jokes or ironically say the wrong, like they ironically give the wrong advice because they think it's obvious. So I often tell Nubros, type in there that you're a Nubro and you get proper help. Otherwise, you might get some trolly, funny comments that might throw you off if you don't know, if you're not that experienced in EVE. Because sometimes we really get people who played maybe for 4 months and they don't know a lot about PvP. And if they type their Nubro, they're good, because then like the jokes go away and that's just proper help.
So, as much as I enjoy plugging Bombers Bar, and we're going to continue to do so this episode, let's talk about the resource allocation changes.
Man, that's caused a bit of a storm on Reddit, huh?
It is. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people very excited. Yeah, and I need someone who understands all of it to explain it to me, because like as we discussed previously, like as far as I'm concerned, ships appear when you press the buy button in the market. I don't really know much about what happens before that.
So I am also a terrible indie player, and I have tried, and I'm so bad at it. But from what I understand, imagine EVE as a bullseye. You've got your high sec in the middle, your low sec around the outside, and your null on the outside. That is going to be the way they divide up some of the minerals in the game now. So therefore, if you were in any of those concentric circles, if you like, you aren't autonomously able to build a thing you would need to import or export to be able to build. So that is the major change that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I can go over like which security types are the exclusive supplier of minerals real quick. So the exclusive main supplier of minerals is divided up between high sec, low sec, and null sec. Also wormholes, but wormholes is not the exclusive supplier of anything, so it really doesn't count.
Wow.
So yeah, they CCP said "F you wormholes." So HiSec is the exclusive supplier of tritanium. In other words, you will not be able to get tritanium from anywhere else except for HiSec now. LowSec is the exclusive supplier of isogen and noxium. And NullSec is the exclusive supplier of zydrine, megasite, and morphite. Wormholes is the exclusive supplier of nothing. They have excluded tritanium, noxium, and morphite from wormholes, so it's even worse to mine. I mean, it was never good to mine in wormholes really in the first place, but now it's even worse.
Weren't wormholes always the only place where you could get the T-free cruiser stuff?
That's
yeah,
gas,
it still
yeah.
is, right?
Yeah,
Gas
it is.
and
they've changed that too. We can go over that, but as far as minerals are concerned, for the majority of the rest of Eve, those are the changes for the minerals.
Yeah, and I guess like I'm a wormholer, and I really don't want to sound biased, but I do feel somewhat aggrieved, and that is me being as polite as I can be, that they have expressly identified that wormholes need to be in the new patch, but then have deliberately just said, yeah, you're not the exclusive provider of anything, despite the risk that you take. There is 0 point to mining wormholes. I'm not a miner, but that for me doesn't feel right, because I like finding miners. I like finding the Rorqual in a wormhole and getting a fight, and that's just not going to be the case after this patch.
That
I
is
mean,
a
just
good
purely
point.
from like a sci-fi story point of view, you'd think like super rare, interesting stuff would appear in those wormholes to make it worth going in there to this very dangerous local free space to get these fancy things and then get out again. That sounds like a really cool, fun, exciting mission for some like high-sec miner. He's like, I'm going to get in there, get a bunch of these fancy gems, and then kind of hightail it out before I get blown up. That's kind of, there's a cool story there. You know, it feels kind of like they're taking that away a little bit. I mean, I guess with the, like you said, there were changes to the gas, because at least I knew that T3Cs and stuff, they come from wormhole gas.
Correct.
Or at least that's a part of it.
So the respawn time for all fullerite gas sites will be increased, and then the spawn probability. Then the spawn probability of all fullerite gas sites will be reduced.
Way less gas.
And then all fullerite quantities at all sites will be increased by 100%. And
well, now I don't know where we stand.
Right. Yeah. So this is so some people are confused. So the way I read this is, when you're scanning a wormhole, you're often having wormholes, gas, relic, and data sites, right? They're the four things that could possibly be there. It can take time to scan wormholes because of that. Now there was going to be potentially half of the gas signatures, so 25% of the signatures shouldn't be there, and then that gas that was there is going to be rolled into the other site. So it might make scanning quicker.
Yeah, it might be a good thing for wormholes, right?
Yeah.
And then
all right. I'd not seen that. That actually sounds good. Yeah, cool.
Certain fullerite sites will be removed from higher class wormholes. So
that's a real head scratcher. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Regarding all of the resource changes, there was a big, really thought out post from TikTok in I think 2015-16 when maybe it was earlier, when the Rorqual changes were announced, and those Rorqual changes, they were too extreme. You were basically inviting people to mine infinitely, especially since back then the anoms didn't, they almost immediately respawned, and they were basically invited to infinitely mine, and Rorquals were even more powerful and more safe. And they should have introduced more scarcity there way earlier, because they let this go for years, and of course all of the nullsec empires have amassed vast quantities of minerals. And I don't even know if these changes that are happening now are going to drain it to a sufficient level.
I mean,
I
it
think
could
it's
be
too little too
years
late.
before we see.
It could
Well,
be years, and in the meantime, it's really gonna hurt a new player who loses a Tech 1 cruiser or whatever. Like, because those prices are all gonna go up, especially Tech 2 stuff. I heard that's gonna go up a lot, and the people who mind all of that shit because it wasn't changed back. You're basically giving away too much for the nullsec alliances. They were able to harvest vast amounts of minerals very easily, and they could bot and multi-box, and they spin up 8 Rockle accounts and all of this crazy stuff. And as soon as CCP wanted to drive it back a little bit, they were screeching because they already got accustomed to it. So they should have changed it back really, really quickly, because it was kind of a faux pas to give him that much in the beginning. But now that they kind of want to get it back, it just seems too little too late. And introducing more scarcity, I thought they would do something like, okay, the anoms don't respawn as often, maybe reduce the amount that they can mine, and make it more so that the smaller groups, like, there's a limited amount and it's not worth having 8 Rockles in there, but 1 Rockle would be fine, and then it's gone. And you would might need to go to a different system, and it's all needs to spread out a little bit more. Same with combat sites. I wouldn't mind if the reward would get higher, but the respawn rates would get much lower, so that you can't use, like, with 5 people, you can't red in one system all the time, 24/7. That's just good for bots and that kind of behavior. And if they would need to change locations, different systems to farm more, if they want to keep on going, then they would need to get into a different system. If it's just one person and for him it's enough, like a normal player, for him it's enough to red for 1 or 2 hours a day and then stop because everything is empty, that would be a more natural thing, in my eyes at least.
So what do you think about the proposed ESS changes then? Do you think that that's going to help fix like what you're talking about right now?
Oh, I'm not even sure what they are. Did they buff the ESS?
So there's
They're
going to be
bringing in a new thing, right?
right.
Yep.
So there's going to be an ESS in every system.
What? It's an NPC created. The NPCs put it down or whatever.
Right. So like
And could we
naturally
blow it up?
occurring. So right. So the ESS how it works now is like someone has to go there, tank the rats, boat into the bubble, and then wait to be able to extract the reward from the ESS, right?
Yeah, and it was sort of designed to create fights, right? Like the idea is you take the extra risk of getting more risk, but someone could come in and potentially attempt to steal it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So what I think is going to happen is that now there's going to be an ESS in every system. Instead of there being like 6 to 10 dudes routing in one system with 40 anoms, and you have to scroll through them all, with one ESS, I think that it's hard to tell, but I think that the idea is that this will spread those dudes out amongst 6 to 8 individual systems, so that each have they have each have their own ESS. Because if you're ratting with your 2 characters, right, and you're in the same system as like some other dude with his character, right, everyone's ESS is going to be pooled into the same ESS. So all those.
But
go ahead.
But is it all of your risk? Like, is it every tick there? Or is it a percentage? Or
At the moment, with the way that current ESS works, I think it's a relatively small percentage.
Yeah.
But I think with
it's not worth fighting over.
Yeah, with the proposed changes, it's going to be a much bigger chunk.
Oh, that would make it more interesting.
Yeah. So it's like most of your ratting ISK will now go to this ESS, and you're going to have to go and pick it up afterwards.
And I mean, at face value, I see 2 things, right? So firstly, it's the prisoner's dilemma. It's like if you're ratting with someone else in the system, like at what point do you go and take your share, which is going to also include his share? So that's interesting. It's like, or do I go before him? Do I wait? But also it would affect bots, right? Because bots, when you jump in a system, they tether or dock or pause up. If their money is sitting in that structure, then you as a player can take it, and the bot's probably going to do very little about it.
That would be great.
Right.
That
Also,
right there, I
won't
think,
there
is a
be
huge positive, yeah.
won't there be the option again? I think now they always, if you pay it out, you have the option to pay it out to everyone who has read it in the system.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
like a
the current
button you
system,
can
yeah.
press, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's still going to be the same, right? So I don't think if I was like in a nullsec alliance and those were all my corp mates and my friends or semi-friends, acquaintances, and even if there was a new player who doesn't have as good as a reading ship as I had, I wouldn't mind giving him part of my share. And I think most nullsec players, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Actually, you've taken my, because now thinking about it, I think what will happen is that you will want to concentrate your ratters into areas where they can all come and help out if someone does go for the ESS, and it'll mean that botters are hit by this quite hard because they're not going to be going to kind of save the ESS, or maybe there's like one guy running a bunch of bots and maybe he's there and paying attention, but he probably isn't.
It could be really good.
Yeah,
Could you do it with a blue as well? Like you just drive around as a blue to them, and you just scoop it as they're just running, and they don't even realize because they're just bebop 01.
Yeah,
You just go around from system to system, filling up your little interceptor with
that
whatever
could be
the drop
great.
is.
I guess it will make a local message though, same as it did before.
I guess so. I guess we'll see how it gets implemented, but I certainly see how this could be a good way of combating botting, which is just definitely still a huge problem in the game.
It is really bad at the moment.
I actually just really quickly, I wanted to go back to the resource allocation changes because we were talking about botting, and like not knowing a crap ton about industry and not being an indie guy at all, but it seems to me that if you make a resource exclusive to the HiSec, and HiSec is a very, very safe place to be, then
yes,
like is that not just going to mean there's hordes of bots out?
Yeah, there is
already.
already like those orca farms and procurer alts, and I mean they're not even pretending that they're players. They make it so obvious.
I mean, the one thing that I would point out as well is that, like, telling the difference between a guy who's botting and a guy who's orca mining in HiSec, like, unless you're in the same room with the guy, you're not going to know. Because it's such an automated, like, you know. Go on,
one of the very cool things about Bombers Bar is we get people from all kinds of places and from all levels of places and from all levels of organization. So the HiSec dudes who play a lot in HiSec, we have a bunch of HiSec corps who like to join our fleets and get kills and get their PvP fix for the week or whatever. And they tell me they can definitely tell. They know, like, the people in the area, they know. Everyone who is a player, like a real human, they know. And when those botting armies come, they also know because they can view their mining drones getting like launched at the exact same server tick and things like that. So it's easy to spot for them if they are bots or if they aren't. And also if you can't really chat with the people, even if they have a Russian description and you write to them in Russian, they should be responding. Yeah, I mean it's a normal thing in HiSec that people chat, and that you can. You know, if you're not hostile to each other in HiSec and you don't want to compete over the asteroid belt or the anomaly, then usually you invite everyone into the same fleet and share the links of the orcas and stuff like that, and you help out like newer players.
So it's easy for the people that live in HiSec to spot the bots, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it should be pretty easy. Also, you can see them moving around on gates sometimes. They're all fleet. I mean, okay, fleet warping is normal, but like, you can see them moving sometimes, and they also have like names. This is blah 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Just
it could be an IS
boxer. The keyboard names.
Yeah. It could be a multi-boxer who's, you know, there is those kinds of people who only dream of having a mining empire and they buy a lot of Omega alts when they can afford it, and their plan is to have a fleet of 20 people or something. And they do it legitimately with IS Boxer. They don't do input broadcasting. That also happens, but mostly it's bots.
Yeah, because those guys are few and far between.
So I wonder how
so I
CCP
mean-
plans to combat that.
Yeah, like what's the thought here? This is what I'm trying to get. How does this play out? Let's say like a couple of years have passed. Everyone's used up all their stocks. So nullsec mining, let's say theoretically, is pretty much as it is now, where you get like, your chunks of oracles out in a system and they're just chomping away on stuff all day. If you hear a call to dock up, you dock up because Bombers Bar's coming or whatever. So high sec, I mean, all you need is an alt and just to sit it there on another screen, mining all day long, you're pretty much safe. And if you get blown up, you really haven't lost a lot. So it just seems like the high sec stuff is going to be incredibly available, very easily bottable or completely AFK play. I don't know what the hell happens with low sec. I mean, I guess low sec mining is a thing right now. Like it must happen.
I think it happens either very, very quietly, or there are big low-sec groups that they own a spot and have a big response fleet.
As it is now, I either find like one procurer who just doesn't seem to know any better mining in some random low-sec system, rarely, or I find like 6 oracles or something.
Yeah, those are the snuff friendly oracles that are supposedly unbeatable, right, son?
Yeah, they're allegedly unbeatable. Oh boy.
I feel like there's a story there.
There is certainly a story.
There is a story.
Well, go ahead, do tell.
Come on, man. Come on. You got to just tell the story. We'll skip straight to story time.
All right, I'll say it with a Nova chip in, certainly.
No, you say it. You say it. I keep out of this.
Okay, so some intel popped up in Bombers Bar one day, and the intel was that someone had some eyes on some oracles, and somebody posted in the general channel that he also knew where some oracles were in low sec, and he was being cheeky because he was those oracles. So he was sort of like, I guess he was in Bombers Bar because he knew to watch the pings. He was also a former FC for Bombers Bar as well, very, very competent guy. And there was just a brief discourse between him and I on, let us know where you are. And he's like, well, it's pretty much impossible to kill oracles in low sec because you can't fire bombs, you can't bubble them, and our response splits is just too hardcore. And that was it. 72 hours later, some intel came in of some oracles, and we dropped on them. And Nova was the FC actually, so he's probably a better person to say it. But as I remember it, landing on grid, there were 7 oracles in this belt, and it is from the same group that this guy's been saying that, hey, it's impossible to kill our oracles. Come at us whenever you want. And we went with not a particularly large fleet. And I'll throw it to Nova because you were the FC on grid.
Yeah, I don't recall how big the fleet was. I just remember having in my head, we have the DPS to break them slowly. We definitely have the DPS to break even max tanked Oracle, even without the focused void bombs, which is kind of a big deal. And beforehand, because I got this intel and I know that all of those low-sec Oracles are under this big umbrella, I told one of our competent T3 cruiser pilots to bring cyno inhibitors, and I think he brought 2. I don't know how he fit them in the cargo, but he brought 2. And he was placing them really nicely. So the opposition, like the counter fleet, they didn't have an option. They were cynoing it in at I think 80 from one of the oracles, but the other oracle was really high up. It was another 100 kilometers or so. And so the upper oracle, we were able to kill. The lower oracle was really protected by hard reds, and we saw some of the Eve Uni guys who helped us and gave us the intel. We saw some of them dying there needlessly, and we were fighting off their fighters from the jamming and fighting the fighters from the carriers. The hard reds were too far away to reach us, which was really nice. So we could just fight on grid, stay on grid, and fight them off until the one Rokel died. And it was good loot too.
Yeah. It was 1.5 bill, and
but now you gotta finish. Now you gotta finish the story, man.
All right. Yeah. So then after the fight, I'm not a big meme poster, but I slapped together a meme, a very inexperienced, bloody paint job, where I took the picture of the dead rock. I took the brief snippets of the conversation I had with this guy in the public channel about how impossible it is to kill their rocks, and then I put up the kill mail of the rock, right? And it was clear that 72 hours after saying in a public channel that it was impossible, you couldn't kill him. That meme was put in Bombers Bar. It made it to Reddit, and that particular group is pretty big in Reddit. They love to post positively or negatively in Reddit, and naturally they took some offence to being called out, I guess. So the very next Bombers Bar fleet, unfortunately, was AWOXed. So a hunter lit a Sino, the fleet jumped, and all of them were smart bombed to death. So that was their we'll get you back, Bombers Bar.
Oh, that's great.
That's funny.
I mean, their
what an
local
absolute roller coaster.
their local loot at least paid for all of those losses. And we have Obamacare. For people who don't know, Obamacare, it sounds like SRP, but we call it Obamacare because it's more friendly.
Yeah.
And well, when we get those big drops from excavator mines and those local modules or capital modules in general from supercaps, sometimes we also get some. It goes towards the hunters, towards FC and support people, and a third also goes to the Obamacare fund in Bombers Bar. And if you calculate it, like the Obamacare of the losses was smaller than what we got in, but it was some junior FC who got beaten up over this just because Sin and I were being silly and funny, and we also didn't think that the guy wouldn't take it as tongue in cheek and just being silly and just making slight fun, of that exchange. We thought his reaction would be more like, "Oh yeah, you got me. Well, can't predict everything," or something like that. We didn't think that he was really angry about it, but he felt personally attacked. It was not supposed to be. Well, that was not our intention.
To be
next time,
fair, I actually think that's a fantastic response.
It's funny.
Brett, time has passed, but I gotta say, that does make an excellent end to the story.
Oh yeah. I mean, I
hilarious.
felt super bad because they AWOXed another junior FC's fleet, and I was like, oh my god, I've caused this. But yeah, you're right. Like in hindsight, I mean, hey, fun was had on all grounds, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I've FC fleets that have been smart bombed to I've lost the entire fleet in 2 seconds to Cloaky smart bombing legions, I think it was. I lost a T3 Jackdaw fleet to one time, and man, it was just funny, funny as shit when it happened. So I honestly think that's a fantastic full stop at the end of that story.
I once FC a 40-man Caracal fleet that we took through a drifter wormhole into Horde space back when we lived in Geminate. And
I remember this.
And they brought an Erebus. They dropped an Erebus on we had this 3-pronged fleet. We had Towers, and we had bombers, and we had Caracals, and I had the Caracals, and it was we're gonna try and tackle this Titan, and I was like, all right. There was a carrier on group. We're gonna try and kill the carrier, and I was like, all right, everyone align to the Sino. I warped the fleet to the Sino at 0, and they said, right as I warped us, they dropped an Erebus. Erebus landed on grid. It's Erebus on grid, and they said, what range did you warp us to the Sino? And I said, range? What? So what range did you warp us to the Sino? I said, 0. Warp to 0. Landed. As we landed, the boson went off. Whole 40-man character dead.
It looks so good. It looks so big. An interceptor on that grid and watching the fleet land and then vaporize was so fucking funny. Holy shit.
Did anyone get a screenshot? Surely that's the time where you're like, well, I can't do anything else. I may as well press print screen.
I was just kind of sitting there away from my keyboard do I say anything? Do I drop corp? What do I do? And we all laughed about it. It was just Caracals. That's the funny part about it. Same with bombers. Yeah. It's at the end of the day, it's just bombers. Any ship. It's just a ship. 100%. It's all fun.
That's exactly right, and that's I hate losing people in the fleet, but
Same.
bombers are a very expendable way of running the fleets.
Also, that's why we have a bomber care, so the FCs shouldn't feel too hesitant to take fights that are on paper not really on their side, but maybe they can pull it off. And we always encourage the FCs to be aggressive and try stuff. And the Obamacare thing was invented because in the beginning, I was dying a lot as a new pro bomber pilot. And my income was like from relic site hunting. And my income wasn't really high enough to sustain losing all of these bombers. So it helps, especially for the new rows, it helps with the heavy losses. And for the hunters who lose a lot of ships.
Yeah. That's a good thing, to not have that fear in the back of your mind, like, is everyone going to show up to my next fleet because they don't have enough money? Like, that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Right. That would be horrible.
What would you say your guys is like, as far as losses are concerned, what would you say your like top story is for lossing? Yeah. What's your top story?
That's a word.
That's a word.
That is a word tonight. I mean, I had one today, right? So I took out a fleet today, and it's certainly not my best one, but it's certainly the forefront of my mind. So one of the other FCs had some very, very good intel, which I don't really want to go into too much because we still have a seed to pull on, if we like, for a thread to pull on, I should say. But we had some intel, and so we formed a fleet, and we...
I feel like just saying the word seed there has given away some of what it is, but we'll carry on.
Plant growing in the background. And we have this intel. So we form this fleet under the guise of, it's my birthday roam or stuff like that. And so, we're in range, and through a lot of misdirection, we're sort of keeping the fleet on the edge of their toes, but without giving away too much. And we go to launch our little trap, and we go too early. Like, we thought we'd waited enough time, but we go, and no, it's no good. So we quickly reset the trap, and we just send the hunters off to sort of, I guess, buy some time, if you like. Just, it wasn't a terrible region to hunt. And so this is only, 10 or so hours ago when I'm hunting around with my hunter, and I come across a Noctis salvaging some wrecks in a site that's already been cleared, right? So I land on grid and I tackle it. And a Noctis, like, it's nothing to write home about dropping on. And we don't want to move the fleet just yet. So I'm like, well, I'll just hang on to this guy and see what happens. So there I am, hanging onto this Noctis, and sure enough, on D-scan, an interceptor pops up. I'm like, okay, maybe they're doing something. And then a Macarial pops up on D-scan, and sure enough, the interceptor comes in, and it counter tackles me. So now I'm tackled. So I'm in regardless now.
Yep.
So I've got the Noctis, the interceptor's got me, and the Macarial comes in, and I get excited. I hype the fleet. I drive at this Macarial. I tackle it. I scram it. Yes, cool. I hit the Sino button, call fleet jump. Now I'm only on one screen at the moment because I'm moving house. So I alt tab to my bomber pilot. I jump as well, and everyone's just screaming, "There's a smart bomber!" And sure enough, this Macarial has just come in and is just smart bombing as I light up. And we've got a 40-man fleet, which rapidly goes down to 7.
Oh,
We're talking seconds. Everyone is just boom, and they've been waiting on the blocks for like an hour.
That's hilarious. That Macarial could not have been happier with the outcome of that situation. I'm sorry, are you saying they dropped the bombers?
He lost the Macarial though.
Okay.
Yeah, the recon's in full range, right? And because the recons have got a bit more. So they've now got this thing tackled. I've got it tackled with my hunter. And so I'm really angry. And so I'm like, no, guys, we're staying. And the fleet is just, the morale is shot. There's like 3 bombers that survived out of 40. Everyone's like, no, this is fucking bullshit. And I'm like, no, we're going to kill this guy. And so we're like slowly chipping away at this Macarial. He's jammed, he's tackled. And it's 3 bombers like firing away. And eventually he dies. And fortunately, he actually died with enough loot that we then scooped to take back and replace all the bombers. So
Nice.
crazy. That was only 10 hours ago.
This is the faction smart bombing Mac in Provi.
Yes.
Nice.
Exactly right. From what I heard, the guys on the other end on the Provicoms were laughing pretty hard for about 10 minutes as they just watched the Bombers Bar fleet just get wiped.
That's pretty funny. Like, that's It's really funny.
Honestly,
Well
that's just a great story from both sides. Yeah, it really is.
So
Uh,
that being like top, or at least somewhere near the top of your losses, where's
I
the
think
top of the wins?
hang
oh,
on. Let's
Oh, sorry.
do Nova's one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I think all the kill mail stuff doesn't really matter that much. It's more like community and people. I mean, top kills is probably Titans that we killed and stuff like that, and supers, or something that is really rewarding if you do a great bombing run in an entire fleet. At least the bombing runs in MTKO that I did are like my highlights, because those were the biggest bombing runs that I ever heard of and the most successful ones. And also it was the armor mechs of very, very shiny armor mechs with the implant set that give you more buffer, and they were supposed to be unbombable. Well, if you have 120 bombers and you do it right, turns out they're not. But I think the community stuff, that's like the biggest wins and losses. For example, the biggest losses for me always when we lose someone to drama or something like that. That's something that I really want to avoid, and I think we've been very successful the past 1.5, 2 years to do that. And one of the key, and I can only recommend it, if you have something like a Discord channel and you're a group and you see disagreements going on between people, if they're in written text, you can't hear the undertone. And people have, like us humans, we have this base function of assuming a worse intention. Like assuming if there's two interpretations, you tend to assume the more negative one. And this spirals in text conversations very badly. So what everyone should do is, if you see a disagreement with people, tell them to go on comms and talk to each other. That's way better, way more efficient than people chatting, and that keeps a lot of trouble away. Just by the
That's
base
such
principle of
excellent
talking.
advice.
Yeah, that's really
Just
good.
by
really is
base
such good
principle
advice.
of talking to each other. Everything else can spiral into toxicity, even though both people are perfectly fine humans and they're nice guys. But it leads to misunderstanding each other, missing the points, and missing the undertones of a conversation. And I mean, you can see it in some countries where around the world in real life, where they kind of split apart and people hate each other online, and you can see it on Twitter and everywhere. That's the function of our brains, because evolutionarily, you gotta pay more attention to the things that are possible threats that are possibly super negative for you in your tribe or whatever. So the interpretation leans more towards safety, which means more towards the more negative stuff. When if you change it up and you interpret everything willfully, or like if you're super ignorant towards what you're reading and you just interpret everything super positively, you're going to feel great all the time. You're going to turn every conversation into a better one and to a positive one. And it's like an upward spiral, and compared to a downward spiral of negativity and divisiveness.
I feel like we've like jumped the rails on EVE Online and are just now giving really solid life advice. Like
Yeah.
this is just
Well,
good advice generally.
Yeah.
If you try to figure out community and how to find the best solutions for a type or a size of community, it kind of tends to go into real life topics. You got to figure out the best way, and what's the best way in EVE. A lot of the times, if you min-max it, it can also help you in real life. For example, I know people who do share trading that started out on Cheetah Trade Hub, and they do shares now in real life and make a lot of money.
Eve does mirror real life more often than not, I find.
Yeah, and in EVE, the costs are not as high if you fuck something up. You can try.
Yeah. Oh, we've talked about this before, that EVE is a very good reality simulator.
Yeah.
Also, but it costs too much time.
Well, yes, yeah, and this is one of the problems of EVE. It's such a good reality simulator, that it can essentially kind of take over from reality, where the kind of the successes and failures of EVE Online are the defining ones in your life. And it's hard for me to argue that isn't valid, because I come from a background of like gaming mostly being a huge part of my life. So yeah, I don't. It gets very confusing and philosophical when you get this far into kind of like the reality simulator that is EVE Online.
I have a silly question for you guys. Has the Niyarja thing affected you guys negatively in terms of convenience and playtime? Because I know it has for me 2 times already. I have not gone to a fleet because I didn't want to risk my expensive ship, and I didn't want to go 30 jumps either, so I just logged off and did something productive in real life instead.
Yeah,
And I
like
think
it affects me negatively in the sense that it's like it's more difficult for me to. So, for instance, we live in a wormhole, and if we get a good high set connection, I have to consider like, oh, this is a 9 Jita, right? But it goes to Niyarja, so it's not really a 9 Jita. Um, or if we're trying to get to a target, we have to go through high sec to get to the high sec static of that target, or something like that. I have to consider whether or not it goes to Niyarja. But it's not enough of an inconvenience for me to really be that put out by it. I don't mind it that much. It's not.
I think it hinders casual players, and I want more casual players in EVE. I don't like this whole attitude. Oh, you're not hardcore enough. You don't spend enough time. Oh, if 30 minutes is too much time for you to spend to travel somewhere, then you're not worthy, or that kind of stuff.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I would say, sorry, no, I would say negative for me. When it first came out and it was like, it was like breaking news, maybe it's going to happen. I was super excited for it because I was like, yes, this is going to shake stuff up. But I've been negatively affected far too many times, particularly as a wormhole. So I know what you're saying about, hey, you could just find another chain or whatever. But I wouldn't say we do a lot of evictions, but we have done some evictions since the Niyarja change, and getting the loot out is now very painful. And I know that's woe is me. You just made off with tens, hundreds, however many bill. But the time it takes to haul is crazy. Like, and that's a person that has to do it. And when you're moving that amount of stuff, you've got to use, I guess, trusted individuals. So it's a nucleus of people you burn out. And at the same time, when you're prepping for fleets, I personally find content creators are I don't want to say woe is me, but content creators spend a lot of time setting up fleets for people. And when that sort of thing gets in the way, it takes many more hours that I guess you have to borrow from your real life to set up the fleet and potentially move the fleet. So that can be quite frustrating.
Yeah, I don't like this tendency. I like the warp speed changes because it took away non-critical. It's not critical for the game if you make the ships faster, but it helps everyone in having to spend less time in warp, which is not contributing, not extra fun. There's no upside and just like big travel time. I don't know. Can we swear on this podcast? I didn't ask before.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. Fucking travel time is nonsense, and I think I'm a big proponent of simplicity and only highlighting the positive sides of the game and the things that are fun, and leaving the tedious tasks that is so much of EVE and so much of EVE playtime, reducing it as much as possible. But I think I was also excited about Niyarja because I like shaking up things and I like kills, but I don't see the upsides as much as I see the downsides, especially for the everyday normal player, like I say casual player that plays on the weekends mostly and only has a certain amount of time.
That this might not be it, right? Like Hilma has been big on, hey, before the end of the year, the final unveiling of whatever the trigs are doing is probably going to be put in front of us, and there's lots of hints of, hey, maybe it's not the permanent change that we think it might be. So I don't know. Who knows what it would be.
It would be cool if they would. I mean, I don't know, if they would make like some other gates and make it more connected with each other, so you would have less travel time in total. That would be awesome, but I don't think that's going to happen. But let's see what's coming out. I'm really hopeful. They've done a bunch of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been, with a lot of these changes, And I think it's so clear to people who've played the game for a long time that it's next to impossible when you make a change to fully comprehend what the outcome of that change is going to be. Because
Yeah.
EVE is so complex and there are so many different things acting, not just like the game mechanics, but mostly player psychology. And like predicting human psychology is something that people have spent their lifetimes, and the human race has been trying to do this for basically since we've been humans. So it's a very, very hard thing to do. So yeah, I kind of what I hope is that CCP doesn't let things fester, because they have a habit of kind of being quite hands off in that they'll put a feature in and then they'll just leave it.
Yeah,
And
like the local changes, not changing it back
Yeah.
for 4 years.
Perfect example. Yes. And frankly, so many mechanics that have been brought into the game and just left alone. And it's like they really need more frequent changes, and not to be afraid to just go in and say, "Hey, this isn't working the way we like. We're gonna switch it." And I kind of felt like they were almost there, because like when the blackout came, I just using a recent example. I think the blackout, it turned up. A lot of us were super excited about it. Wormhole space everywhere. Fantastic. This sounds great. We're going to get loads of kills. But the actual psychological effect of it was that there were a lot less fights, because people weren't willing to put their ships out there when they had no idea what was the system. And people kind of tended to play a little bit more
I think
risk-averse.
that's not necessarily true. Suetonia did an analysis on Zkill. The fights were less valuable with less valuable ships, and they were smaller in size, but they were more frequent. So more towards
Certainly
small
awesome.
gang and cheaper stuff.
Okay.
They
All right.
lost
So,
time and I was finding targets. Like, yeah, it was still feasible.
all right.
Yeah,
Well, then I think it would be fair to say then that for the people who flew Rorks and Capitals and these kind of expensive PvE ships, that that group, which is quite a large group, especially when it comes to kind of the nullsec alliances, were very vocal about the changes to blackout.
Yeah, they have a
Sure,
big
because it's in their
voice.
interests, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
they have, and they had it so good. Like before blackout, it was very easy to super rat. It was incredibly lucrative to rock or mine, and both of them were very safe. So naturally, when you're having, the you're making hay while the sun shines, and then someone turns the lights off. Some great analogies there. Naturally, you're going to be very upset, right?
yeah. But CTP, I think, to their credit there, were reasonably fast about saying, okay, well, we don't feel like this is working, so we're going to switch it back. Now, as to whether they should have done, I think we could probably argue quite strongly from both sides of this one. And I feel like the four of us would probably be in the kind of, let's leave it on camp. But
I would have
whatever.
been for local delay.
So
Yes.
I'm
personal
actually
opinion
a huge fan of you not
at the
appearing in local
time,
until
CCP was
they
going up.
start. Go on, Tim. Sorry.
It's fine. I think back then, so this is what, 18 months, 2 years ago? Is that about right?
Yeah, something
CCP
like that.
was having
Yeah.
trouble interacting with the community. So I think its community interaction team or plan was quite poor. Hey, players, there's a problem. We know the problem. We've got a solution. Get out of our way. We're going to put in our solution. And there was, the chaos era came, and we've certainly felt like the players and even the CSM were not being positively contributing or thought of by. Seen that change since then, but I did feel like the recent mineral distribution change, just the way they have announced it and the way they did the stream, very echoed to me 2 years ago when it was players, we know what's good for you, and you'll harden up, trust us, like get through this. I don't like that we've gone back to what was 2 years ago, because I think we lost a lot of players from that.
I think you're spot on about that. That was the perception of the player base.
Well, I mean, with the most recent changes, with the almost immediately on the Reddit thread, I saw multiple members of the current CSM.
Sorry, so if I was being really
pleasure. Go on, Sin.
Yeah, what were you saying, Sin?
Sorry, no, so I'm mused about writing this up. What's shock and awe? Because when am I coming through it?
Yeah.
Reception. Okay, cool. So when I first joined Eve, there was all this, like, they would release something and the players were just like, whoa. Dudes were like legitimately excited by the things that were coming out. At the moment, I feel like that shock and awe is more, the shock is the announcement and the awe is like the. For me, there's certainly a different Eve than what I joined, 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
On the positive side, something like the Eden ship changes is a very different pace than it used to be. If you guys remember the Swipple as it was introduced in OP, and I think they left it for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
It took them ages to change it. Everyone knew it was OP, and it needed a little nerf. And with this one, what they used to do is leave it for 2 years, even if it's broken. But now the Edencom ships were underpowered and shit, basically, and everyone thought so, but they changed it within a couple of weeks. That's pretty good. That's much better than they used to do before.
Yeah. I absolutely want to see them doing more of that. Just be quick with the changes, reactive, and don't be afraid to, if you see something's not working, just go in and fix it. And if it needs fixing again later, just do it again.
Yeah, I think they're doing much better in planning their resources for this kind of things. That they basically keep dev time open for fixing the stuff they just introduced. So I think they had plans for 1 year, 2 years on what steps they're gonna do, and then they released something, and they didn't have time slots available for fixing the stuff that they introduced. But now they do. Then they have more available. Oh, Cindy seat because
there he goes. We're good. We're good.
Yeah.
I'm back. Sorry, guys.
Welcome back. That's all right.
Your connection is wacky.
I think
that's good. Now I've switched.
Now that you've fixed your connection, I think this is actually a good spot for us to wrap up. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Before we wrap up, real quickly, for a brand new pilot who's looking to get into Bombers Bar to do some of these super cool things you guys have been talking about, to join some of these fleets, get smart bombed. What do you do? What do you do? How do you do this? Just talk me through it as a brand new player.
There are several ways. You can go to our website, bombersbar.org, I think it is, or just Google Bombers Bar, and you're going to have the website on top thing. There is a link for our TeamSpeak and our Discord. In the Discord, there's a Nubro channel and a general channel, and you can ask all the questions you want in there already. In the game, you can type in Bombers space bar in your chat channel search, and you're going to be in the main channel. It has a lot of information in the MOTD and other channels that have more information. And you can also ask all your Nubro questions in there. I highly recommend mentioning that you're a Nubro, and you're going to find your way to the fleets really easily. You don't need to join a corp or anything. Just have a bomber ready somewhere in HiSec. Or not even that. You can look up the fittings. The fittings. It's really easy. Even if you're just like 10 minutes before the fleet deciding to join the fleet, you can make it.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us on and everything.
Yeah,
and you guys don't want to talk about the war anymore? Are we already on the time limit?
I think we're on the time limit.
Oh, okay.
I try to keep it under like an hour 15. I mean, who's paying attention to the war anyways, right? Like, that's boring.
Oh, I am.
Oh, it's so boring.
Oh, come on. If we've got a couple of minutes to talk about the war, let's talk about the war.
Let's talk about the Knicks.
Give us your opinions, Nova. What's going on?
I think it's interesting. Oh, mate, I don't even know from which perspective to look at this, but from our perspective, war is always great. War changes up things. War makes defense fleets weaker for the Rookles and supers that we catch. And war also often tends to give us bombing opportunities where we use damage bombs and bomb entire fleets down. This war hasn't been so good for that yet, but now that they have more reliable fights, it's better. And at the beginning, I was talking a bit of shit about goons because they had a thing about, like, for 3 years I've been watching them kicking out players who were interested in PvP, and they forbid their people to join Bombers Bar fleets and stuff like that. a bunch of silly stuff, and they kicked out a bunch of junior FCs or made their life hell, so they left, and then they join Bombers Bar. They make one fleet in Bombers Bar, and they say, "Oh, this one fleet in Bombers Bar, FCing it was more fun and a better experience than all of my nullsec fleets I did ever." So that's already pretty telling. And then, of course, they don't have a lot of PvPers, and glad for them that a bunch came back, a bunch of FCs and stuff, and now they get their groove on, apparently. And they even took a fight 2-1 outnumbered the other day, and they killed a bunch of shit before they lost all of their fleet, which is pretty good. Pretty good. They took on a fight they were in a disadvantage of, and they killed some stuff. Respect. They should do more of that.
Yeah, that's good. But I got to say, I really like the corporate. I fully agree on that. The corporate culture of Goonswarm, certainly for years now, has been really not a positive influence on Eve. Like the guys coming out of Goonswarm had a really warped view of kind of how the game is played and how to have fun in it. And I've always, it's like they would just be filled with stories of how, we never used to get to do this, and like expecting to be shat on for like getting a fleet blown up or something, or just literally doing something wrong. So I don't know. I think philosophically, I'm very much on the side of the what they call the pappy or whatever we're calling it.
As Bombers Bar, we always wish for it to be very even and to be a long, prolonged fight with a lot of sub-capital involvement. So that's like from Bombers Bar perspective. From Bombers Bar perspective, we're really neutral. We don't care. Like if Goons would give me intel, they never do anymore. But if Goons would give me intel about a bombing timer, and the rule for bombing intel is if you give us intel first, you're gonna get bombed last. And I mean, with the amount of enemies they have, it would be a big advantage for them to have a coordinated bombing group on grid that kind of bombs all of the other groups first.
But they have too much.
But I think
Boat was their superior bombing FC.
Oh, the Seiko. Seiko is really good. Yeah. I like that. I like good bombing. I like to watch good bombing.
And I'll tell you what. I mean, it's clear in the most recent MER, but certainly Fraternity is absolutely making the best opportunity out of this war. As everyone fights in the bottom left of the map, they are certainly crabbing the shit out of the top right of the map.
And they've taken more.
Very clever play by the Fraternity. Yeah, it's like Winterco is. Hey, hats off to them. And I've been trying to bomb them and blops on them a fair bit because they suit my time zone, and they are well organized. Like it's super disciplined.
Yeah, I popped out of nulls and fought them before, and they do not hesitate with the response. Even in the middle of war, they got response fleets, and they just come and blob the shit out of you. They aren't having none of that shit. Like, so that's I agree with you. Hats off to them.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how. Once the kind of war ends, assuming it does at some point, which I guess it has to, as to whether that'll be the next thing. Because if they've kind of been making hay while the sun shines, then that's going to be quite the big power up there in the top right or wherever it is.
Yeah, no, it'll be very interesting because they're certainly more wedded to the what's it called, the like Northern Coalition sort of side of things, but because they've had some wars with Test or Legacy, I should say. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where the lines are drawn after the war.
I do agree with you, Nova. That
Nova.
Having every okay, all right, fine.
No, you were in the middle of a sentence. Come on.
I do agree with you that with everyone deployed, the super capital umbrella response fleet, when you tackle something, is diminished. At the same time, when you have everyone deployed like that, there are less targets on the field. You know what I mean? Like sure, you get the stragglers and you get the ones that either don't care or don't know that they shouldn't be out during the strat ops, but like it just there's less targets in general now too. So it's like I guess like a double-edged sword, two-way street. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there might be less targets, but I feel we still tackle things, and then we get sometimes no response fleet or a half-assed capital response fleet, which we can try to fight on grid heads on. tits on the table. And I really like those kinds of fights. I really like those kind of fights where it's on the edge of, you can't jam every fighter, but the bombers with afterburners, they can take, ages before they die, and they can just warp out. Oh boy, like those are the interesting fights. I really like the fights that are kind of on the edge or kind of on the losing side, but you kind of turn it around with tactics and E-War.
Yeah.
I think everyone does, right? Like, no one,
Yeah.
as much as you love ganking something, I mean, it's much funner when it's a close fight. It brings people
Yeah.
together more.
Yeah, the pilots love it more too.
Mm.
Because they think, oh, our FC is crazy. He's taking this fight. There's a super and free carriers on grid. Why are we not warping out? And then you kind of turn it around and they realize, wow, this was possible.
Those are the best ones. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we got to wrap it up there.
Yeah, we've gone way over. I know.
That's
It's
That's
interesting
fine.
stuff.
It is. It's fun. I wish we could talk all day. I do.
I hope the listeners had fun.
I
Indeed.
hope so too.
I'll
Nova,
ask you later.
Sin, Nova, Sin, thank you for being on the show. We'll have to have you guys on again. Vargan, as always, thank you for being my co-host. All you at home listening, thank you for tuning in. This has been Primary Target. See you later.